When I was 19, I thought rules were for other people, definitely not for me, and definitely not for the dead. That fall, I moved to Salem to live with my uncle. He ran a small family funeral home, been in our bloodline for 3 generations. The place was old, built from dark wood and cold tile. It smelled like metal, disinfectant, and something faintly wrong. The kind of smell that clings to you. My uncle was a quiet man, serious to the point of weird. The first night I arrived, he gave me 3 rules. Never answer the front door after midnight. Always knock twice before entering the prep room. And never, ever, open the third casket in the cold room. He said it so dead serious that it didn't even feel like a joke. I laughed anyway. He didn't. 3 weeks later, he got called out unexpectedly one night and left me in charge. Before leaving, he grabbed my shoulder and said, "Do not go into the cold room. No matter what you hear," that last part hit weird. No matter what you hear? After he left, I tried to keep busy, sweeping floors, sorting paperwork, pretending not to think about that last warning. The place was quiet except for the occasional creak of the walls or the faint hum of the freezers. Around 1:30 a.m., I heard it. 3 slow knocks. At first I thought it came from the front door. I checked. Nothing. Then it came again, louder, and I realized it was coming from the back, from behind the cold room door. My heart started pounding so hard it almost hurt. I told myself it was the pipes, or maybe one of the metal trays shifting under pressure. Old buildings make weird noises, right? But then, 3 more knocks. Slow, steady, deliberate. Like someone, or something, was trying to get out. I backed away, locked myself in the office, told myself not to think about it, but the silence that followed was somehow worse. By 2:45, curiosity had eaten through every bit of fear I had left. The knocking had stopped, but the cold in the air hadn't. I told myself I'd just check. I wouldn't open anything, just make sure everything was fine. The hallway felt tighter with every step. My hands shook as I slid the brass key into the lock. The door groaned as it opened, and a blast of freezing air hit my face. Inside were 3 caskets, lined up like sleeping giants. The third one sat at the end, older, rusted, unmarked. My uncle's warning echoed in my head. Never open the third casket. So I didn't. But when I leaned in to take a closer look, the second casket rattled. Hard. I froze. Then, against all logic, I leaned closer and pressed my ear against the lid, and I heard it. Breathing. Slow. Steady. Alive. I ran. Slammed the door. Locked it. Twice. 3 times. Didn't matter. And sat against the office wall until the sun came up. When my uncle came back, his face looked 10 years older. He saw the missing key in my hand, but didn't yell. He just walked straight to the cold room, opened the door, stood there for a long time, and came back looking defeated. "I told you not to listen," he said. "I didn't open it," I told him. "But I heard something breathing." He nodded slowly, like that was somehow worse. "That's why I said not to listen. It doesn't want out. It just wants attention. And once you give it that, it follows." Then he did something I'd never seen before. He poured himself a drink. His hand shook the whole time. He told me that years ago, a transport company accidentally delivered that casket. No tag, no paperwork. My grandfather decided to keep it. After that, the place changed. Cold spots, flickering lights, whispers in the vents. The kind of stuff you'd laugh at until you saw it yourself. Eventually, they locked it away in the cold room, thinking that keeping it frozen would keep it quiet. "Why not bury it?" I asked. "You can't bury what refuses the ground," he said. "Someone tried once. They found him dead next to it, eyes wide open, lips blue. That night, Lying in the guest room upstairs, I heard it again. Not knocking this time. A whisper coming from downstairs. It said my name. The next morning, my uncle told me I had to leave. "You listened," he said quietly. "That's enough. It knows you now." He drove me to the bus station himself and told me not to look back. I didn't, but maybe I should have, just to see if something followed. Because after that night, the knocking never stopped. I'd hear it in new apartments, on closet doors, even on motel walls. Always 3 knocks. Sometimes I'd get letters, blank envelopes, no return address. Once, a photo of a casket sitting in the snow. I tried everything. Therapy, prayer, moving across the country. Nothing worked. It never attacked. It never said anything again. It just made sure I knew it was still there. Years later, when my uncle died, I went back to Salem for the funeral. The old funeral home was boarded up, but one side door was slightly open. I don't know why, but I went in. The inside looked frozen in time, dust everywhere, except in the hallway outside the cold room. That air was clean, almost fresh. The door was wide open. The third casket was gone. The chain that once sealed it was snapped. And on the prep table was an envelope with my name on it. I didn't open it. I burned it in the sink of a cheap motel. That night, I drove for hours, trying to outrun the feeling that something was still with me. When the sun finally came up, I pulled over and looked into the back seat. Empty. Then I heard it. 3 slow knocks on the leather right behind me, and a whisper so close it brushed the back of my neck. I knew you'd listen. When I was 20, I worked weekends at my uncle's funeral home in Seattle. Not exactly a dream job, but it paid better than anything else I could get. The place had been around since the 1920s, wedged between an old auto shop and a boarded-up dry cleaner. It always smelled cold, like bleach, metal, and something sour that never really went away. I'll never forget the day the small white coffin came in. The delivery driver looked off, sweaty, jumpy. He kept glancing toward the alley behind him like someone was following. He handed my uncle the clipboard, got his signature, and left without saying a word. The coffin itself was small, white, with silver trim. The kind you don't ever want to see in person because it means it's for a child. We wheeled it into the cold room together, and even through my gloves, I swear I could feel the cold radiating from it, colder than the air around it. My uncle stared at the lid for a long time. Then he said quietly, "We weren't expecting this one." That's when I realized there was no paperwork, no name, no records, no scheduled service, nothing. He went through every file, every logbook. Nothing matched. No funeral home ever sends a body without documentation. The rest of the day was uneventful, quiet, which is pretty normal in that line of work. But the air felt heavier somehow, like the whole building was waiting for something. When I walked past the cold room later, I swear I felt static in the air, like before a thunderstorm. It wasn't loud, but it made the hairs on my arms stand up. That night, my uncle asked me to lock up while he finished a call in the embalming room. I hesitated at the cold room door. That coffin sat in the middle of the floor like it was aware of me. I shut the door quickly and told myself not to think about it. The next morning, my uncle looked exhausted, like he hadn't slept. "Do me a favor," he said. "Don't go in the cold room for a while." He didn't explain, just walked away. Of course, that made it worse. Curiosity's a disease. You can't leave it alone. So later that day, when he left for a meeting, I went in. The air hit me like ice, and when I got close to the coffin, I noticed 5 small fingerprints on the lid. They weren't dust or smudges. They were frozen, tiny handprints in frost. I backed out fast, locked the door, and pretended nothing happened. When my uncle came back, he took one look at me and sighed. "You went in, didn't you?" I nodded. He told me he'd finally traced where the delivery came from. A funeral home in Idaho that had shut down 8 years earlier. He didn't explain how something from there ended up here. That night, I couldn't let it go. I stayed late and hid in the supply room near the prep area just to see what he'd do. Around 11, I heard the wheels of a gurney echo across the tile. I peeked out. My uncle was pushing the small white coffin toward the prep table. He opened it slowly and just stood there. He didn't move for a long time. Then I heard him whisper, "I'm sorry." I didn't know. The lights flickered once. Every muscle in my body locked up. He closed the lid gently, almost tenderly, and rolled it back into the cold room. Then he locked it with a different key I'd never seen before and left through the back door without saying a word. I couldn't sleep that night. I just kept picturing those frost handprints. The next morning, he told me what he'd seen. The coffin wasn't sealed. When he opened it, the child inside didn't look embalmed, didn't look dead. The skin still had color. The lips weren't blue. The eyes were slightly open. He said sometimes he thought they blinked. That's when I decided I was done with that job. But before I could quit, she showed up. It was a Thursday afternoon. The sky was gray and the air smelled like rain. A woman came in wearing an old wool coat and gloves, even though it wasn't cold. Her voice was calm, soft. "I'm here for my daughter." "What's her name?" I asked. She didn't answer, she just stared at me. Then she said, "White coffin. Silver edges. She's in the cold room." I froze. We hadn't told anyone about that. No one knew. I ran to get my uncle. He went pale when I told him. "We didn't release a name," he whispered. We rushed back to the front desk, but the woman was gone. We checked the security footage. She was there, clear as day, walking in through the front door, but there was no footage of her leaving. None. That night, my uncle moved the coffin into a sealed chamber in the back. "Don't ask," he told me. But of course I did. Curiosity again. After hours I came back, entered the code. The cold hit me like a wall. I lifted the lid slowly. It was empty. My breath fogged the air. My brain couldn't make sense of it. Then, right in front of me, tiny footprints started forming in the frost on the floor. One step, then another, coming straight toward me. I didn't think. I ran, slammed the door shut, locked it, and got in my car. I drove until the sun came up. The next morning, my uncle called me. He didn't even sound surprised. "I've seen it too," he said. "Since that coffin arrived, lights flickering, doors opening on their own. I tried to take her to the crematory once. Halfway there, the brakes failed. The truck spun off the road. When they pulled it from the ditch, the coffin was gone. When I got back here, it was sitting in the cold room again. Untouched." He sighed, a sound that felt older than both of us. "We just pretend it's not there now. That's the only way to live with it." I quit a few weeks later, but even now, a year later, I still dream about that coffin. The small white lid, the silver trim, the frost, and sometimes, when I wake up in the middle of the night, the room is cold enough to see my breath, and somewhere, faint and far away, I swear I hear a child whispering my name. Last summer, I took an internship at a small funeral home in Milwaukee. I was studying mortuary science, so it made sense at the time. It was quiet work, steady, and the guy who ran it, Martin, seemed kind enough. A little pale, a little tired, but kind. The building itself was old, probably built before anyone thought about windows that actually opened. It smelled like roses and formaldehyde, a fake sweetness covering something that never really left. On my first day, Martin gave me 2 rules. Respect the bodies, and never go into the basement. He said it so casually that I laughed, thinking it was a joke. but he didn't laugh back. For the first couple weeks, everything felt normal. I learned how to prep bodies, handle paperwork, deal with grieving families. The work wasn't easy, but it was calm, predictable. Then I started hearing things. It began one afternoon when the whole place was quiet. I was restocking chemicals when I heard a faint knocking. 3 slow, dull taps, coming from somewhere near the back wall of the cold room. When I asked Martin about it, he didn't even look up from his paperwork. "You'll hear things sometimes," he said. "Don't answer them." He didn't explain, just went back to work like it was nothing. That night, after he left, I dropped my key card and it slid under the cold room door. When I bent down to reach for it, I noticed something strange. There was a narrow seam in the wall behind the storage rack, perfectly straight, like the edge of a hidden door. When I pressed on it, I heard a soft click. The panel shifted slightly, and cold air drifted out from behind it. I didn't go any further that night, but the thought of it stayed in my head. A locked basement hidden behind a secret panel. It didn't sit right. A few nights later, when I was closing up alone, I decided to check it out. I grabbed a flashlight, slid the panel open, and found a staircase leading down into the dark. The air that came up smelled like damp earth and something rotten, like wet wood that had been buried too long. At the bottom of the stairs was a heavy metal door with a new padlock. The paint around it was scraped like someone had tried to pry it open before. I should have stopped there. I didn't. I grabbed a crowbar from the prep room and broke the lock. The door creaked open, and a blast of freezing air hit me in the face. What I saw inside didn't make sense. It was a small concrete room lined with white body bags, at least a dozen of them, stacked on metal racks. Some of them looked new, too new. And then I saw one of them move, just a twitch, but enough to make my stomach drop. Before I could convince myself to run, I heard it. A whisper, so soft it barely existed. "Help me." It didn't sound like it came from one place. It was everywhere. In the air, the walls, the back of my mind. I turned to leave, but then I saw a smaller bag on the floor in the corner, not on a rack like the others, crumpled, as if someone had just thrown it there. I don't know why, but I unzipped it. Maybe I wanted to prove to myself it wasn't real. The whisper stopped. Inside was a child, pale, bruised around the neck, eyes closed, lips slightly parted like they'd been frozen mid-breath. Pinned to the shirt was a small piece of paper with one word written on it: "Please." I zipped it back up, hands shaking, and bolted. I locked the door, shoved the panel back into place, and didn't sleep that night. The next morning I told Martin everything. He just stared at me for a long time, like he was trying to decide how much truth I could handle. Then he said, "Some things don't stay buried." That's all. Nothing else. After that, things got worse. The lights started flickering at random. The old dumbwaiter in the hallway would rattle by itself. Sometimes, when I was working alone, I'd hear faint knocking coming from inside the walls. 3 slow taps, just like before. A few nights later, it happened again. I was finishing up some paperwork when I heard the knocking, louder this time, coming from behind the wall near the cold room. I put my hand against the seam. The wall was ice cold. For a long time, I just stood there, heart pounding, waiting. Then I heard it again, not knocking, whispering, a child's voice. "Please." That was it for me. I quit the next morning, didn't even go back for my last paycheck. I moved out of the city, changed my number, tried to forget. But some nights, when the wind's quiet and I can't sleep, I still hear that sound. Knock, knock, knock. And if I'm really unlucky, just before it stops, I hear the whisper again. "Help me."